praise of Yahweh shall my mouth speak, and let all flesh bless his holy name forever and ever. Let everything that breatheth praise Yahweh, praise ye Yahweh, and so forth. Okay, plenty more there. For good is Yahweh unto everlasting, his mercy, and to all generations his faithfulness. Hebrew eschatological hymns. The sanctuary hymns of praise which we have been studying have for the most part the backward look through Israel's history to the creation of the world. A few of them also have in small degree the forward look calling for Yahweh's praise because of what he will yet accomplish in the world, and certainly many of the hymns are characterized by an enthusiasm for Yahweh's greatness that asserts or presupposes his supremacy in the universe. Yahweh is king, let the earth rejoice, let the many shores be glad. Lots more information. Hebrew nature hymns. The abode of the hymns have already discussed what was the sanctuary, and their place was in sanctuary worship, but there is a group of hymns, the real background of which was nature's great out of doors. These hymns include Psalms 29, 19:1, 5b, 19:5c to 7, 104 and 8. Hebrew hymns in praise of sacred institutions. There were in Hebrew religious poesy not only hymns in praise of deity, but also hymns in praise of sacred institutions. Especially prominent were hymns in praise of the sanctuary. Naturally, however, only those that were written in praise of the temple in Jerusalem, or could be so interpreted, had a chance for survival, and of those we have in the Psalter only 84, 122, 48 and 87. How lovely is thy dwelling, O Yahweh of hosts! Long with thee fainteth my soul. For the courts of Yahweh, my heart and my flesh cry out unto the living God. Two Psalms 119 and 19, 8 to 15 are in praise of the Jewish law. Since Psalms 119 is an alphabetical psalm, each successive 8 lines beginning with the 22 successive letters of the Hebrew alphabet, its 176 lines are necessarily a very mechanical and mediocre production. Psalms 19:8-15, on the other hand, is a much finer piece of craftsmanship. The first 6 lines, verses 8 to 10, which are strikingly uniform style, draw attention to 6 complementary virtues of the law. Then 4 lines, verses 11 to 12, express in general terms the joy that is to be found in knowledge of the law and the practical benefit to be derived from obedience to it. Verses 13 and 14 present his humble petition that he be delivered from violating the law unwittingly or presumptuously, while verse 15 dedicates the hymn so carefully written, not to any princely patron but to Yahweh his strength and redeemer. Another little group of hymns deals with the king, who as the anointed of Yahweh was also a sacred institution. Assyrian hymns of praise. Assyrian hymnal introduction to prayers. As in the case of the Hebrew hymns of praise, so also it is right to attempt to see the Assyrian hymns in relation to the whole body of Assyrian religious poetry. Assyrian communication and Assyrian individuals inevitably had their afflictions, and like their kinsmen, the Hebrews, they called out unto deity in their distresses in prayers of lamentation and supplication. They experienced also on various occasions what they believed to be deliverances out of their troubles, and when they could attribute those deliverances to the aid of deity, they felt gratitude and expressed their gratitude by sacrifices and thanksgiving to the gods. Furthermore, the Assyrians felt adoration for deity, trusted in deity, reflected upon the will of deity, and the secret of the prosperous life. And like their kinsmen, the Hebrews, they strove to express their ideas and their emotions in poetry. Accordingly, we have in Assyrian religious poetry much that corresponds to what is found in the Old Testament Psalter. However, one striking difference between Hebrew and Assyrian religious poetry confronts us at the very outset. The Hebrew poetry is concerned with the one God Yahweh, while Assyrian poetry has to do with many gods: Shamash, Sin, Nebo, Ninib, Nugal, Adad, Lusku, Bel, Marduk, and others. This might seem to make it very difficult, if not impossible, to form any unified conception of Assyrian religion, or to make any satisfactory comparison between the Psalms of Assyrian and Israel. But from the beginning there were many points of similarity between the Assyrian gods of the various city-states, who frequently bore, to be sure, different names, but who represented or were associated with the same objects or forces in nature. Furthermore, the growth of political unity in Mesopotamia was accompanied there, as it has been elsewhere, by a growth in religious unity. As one city gained authority over other cities, its god not only acquired greater prestige, but he also extended his authority in greater or lesser measure over the conquered cities and over the gods of those cities. Moreover, he tended to take to himself the chief prerogatives and attributes of the conquered deities. With the growth and organisation of empire, there developed in the exaltation of one god to a supreme place a tendency towards monotheism, and with the inevitable interchange of religious ideas, a gradually increasing similarity in the attributes and prerogatives of the chief gods. Especially is it to be recognised that hymnal enthusiasm tends to blot out for the time the consciousness of other deities, and to exalt in wisdom and power and goodness the deity which is being worshipped, so that for the moment the attitude of the worshipper may be practically that of a monotheist. Accordingly, the many names for deity have relatively little significance. They offer no serious obstacle to the student who would compare the religious ideas and experiences of Mesopotamia with the religious ideas and experiences of Israel. Okay, it goes on about the Syrian literature. The number of Assyrian hymns copied, transliterated and translated by Assyriologists is between 60 and 70. The number cannot be definitely fixed, since many texts are but mere fragments because of the breaking and marring of the clay tablets. The purpose of the hymn is to praise the deity, and the emotion behind the hymn is enthusiasm for the great and glorious God, for his power, for his wisdom, for his great achievements. The genuine hymn, accordingly, is objective rather than subjective. The prayer, on the other hand, is concerned with the relationship of worshipper and deity. The worshipper is in trouble and looks to the deity for forgiveness, or prosperous and turns to the deity with gratitude. Beginning then with class 1 of Assyrian hymns, the hymnal introduction to prayers, it is to be further observed that these prayers are temple prayers. Marduk number 9 has 14 lines of directions for the performance of certain ceremonies, after which the priest is instructed to take the hand of the sick man and repeat the psalm, of which lines 17 to 44 are the hymnal portion, and 45 to 94 the prayer proper. So also Marduk number 12 states in line 1 to 5 of the text that the Urugalu priest is to arise in the first hour of the night on the second day of Nisan. I think that was like March in the Hebrew calendar. Wash in a river water, put on a linen garment and repeat the psalm, of which lines 6 to 28 are hymnal, 29 to 32 petition in favour of the deity for the city Babylon and temple Esagila. A hymn to Ishtar number 3 is followed by an enumeration of the sacrifices for the goddess and of presents for the temple servants. Above all, the hymns are in such a uniform and formal style, and the gods are so frequently addressed as lords of such temples that one is compelled to look to the temple as the birthplace and home of many of these Assyrian hymns. It is altogether natural that there should be a hymnal introduction to the temple prayer. The Assyrian god in his temple is as the king in his palace. He must not be approached abruptly or brusquely. Indeed, the Assyrian gods are kings, queens, princes. Consequently, the formal court style is used in addressing them. It is not used rigidly in all hymns, but it is the norm on which it is advisable to take our departure. An example of this formal court style is Nugal number 1. O Lord, mighty and exalted, firstborn of Nunamet, prince of the Anunnaki, lord of the battle, offspring of Kutusha, the mighty queen, O noble, strong one of the gods, darling of Nineveh. It goes on like that. Assyrian hymns of class 1 can be divided into two portions. The first portion, the invocation, the second portion, the ascription of praise. And there's many more hymns there. Many more Assyrian prayers and invocations. Syrian antiphonal hymns. There's also among the Syrian hymns addressed in the second person to deity a group of hymns which are distinguished by refrains, frequent repetitions of a phrase or clause, or marked parallelisms of lines. It is, however, in most cases very difficult to know whether the hymn is actually antiphonal or not. Warrior, raging flood, destroyer of the hostile land. Warrior, lord of the underworld, destroyer of the hostile land. God that cometh forth from Shitlam, destroyer of the hostile land. Great steer, mighty lord, destroyer of the hostile land. And many more of these Syrian hymns here. Quite a lot of information on the Assyrian hymns here, different kinds and utterances. The third hymnal composition of this group, the so-called Litany to Ashur, is in two parts. Ashur was the title of God to the Assyrians. That was his title. Part 1 is a long hymn addressed by an individual, possibly Ashurbanipal, to Ashur, that's God, of which the chief distinguished characteristic is the oft repeated vow of the individual to praise the deity. 19 of the 22 lines of Part 1 are as follows: Mighty Lord of the gods, all-knowing, powerful, stately Lord of the gods, determiner of fates. Ashur, mighty Lord, all-knowing one. Ashur, almighty one, Lord of the gods, Lord of the lands. O glorious one, whose name arouses fear. O Ashur, whose decrees reach into the distance. He who dwells at Ashkara, Ashur, determiner of fates. promise of the poet here to make the fame of Ashur known to later generations corresponds to the promise of the author of Psalm 45 for the fame of the reigning Hebrew king. In part 2 of this litany to Ashur, first Anu, Bel and Er, the lords of the gods, proclaim Ashurbanipal as ruler of Assyria, promising him many years of sovereignty, lines 1 to 6, and then Ashur appoints him to lordship over lands and men, lines 7 to 8. The concluding couplet, lines 9 to 10, is suggestive of the close relationship between the fame of the king and the fame of the patron god of the kingdom. Assyrian self-laudations of the gods. There follows a strophe of 6 lines, of which the first half lines give different titles of Ishtar, and so forth. The 5 hymns just reviewed are all in the nature of a self-introduction of the gods and goddesses as powerful, incomparable beings. This is what one would expect. There isn't among gods, as among kings, a great deal of rivalry about prestige. The god must sound abroad his own glory. Beyond that, however, is the fact that in every religion a god must be, to a large extent, an unknown deity. His self-manifestations can only be occasional and never clearly apprehended by man, so that when the god appears, man must necessarily ask, "Who art thou?" And the deity must reply, as did Ninib and Belet and Ishtar, "I am." These self-introductions of deity inevitably recall to the mind of the Old Testament student Yahweh's introduction of himself to Moses in Exodus 3:6, and again the self-introduction of Yahweh that preceded the promulgation of the Ten Commandments in Exodus 20 verse 2. Especially are they, however, suggestive of the repeated self-announcements of the deity that occur in almost every chapter of Isaiah 40 to 55. Here also we have again and again the rhetorical question and the emphasis upon the power, the wisdom, the fame, and the incomparable status of Yahweh. Just a few of these hymnal lines are here quoted. Who raised up from the east, the man who is ever victorious? I, Yahweh, am the first, and I am the last, I am he. Isaiah 41:2-4. I am Yahweh, that is my name. I yield my glory to no one, nor my praise to idols. Isaiah 42:8. I am Yahweh, besides me there is no Saviour. Isaiah 42:8. And I have saved, therefore are you my witnesses, and so forth. These and a great many similar lines have a good deal of the phraseology and the atmosphere of the Assyrian hymns of Belet and Ishtar, and so far support the Babylonian origin of Isaiah 40 to 45. But there is in the Assyrian hymns no such clear relationship of the deity to history as is characterized of the Hebrew hymns in Isaiah 40 to 50. There remains of Assyrian hymns still to be recognized, a small and distinct group in which deity is praised by man in the third person. One of these, Nugal number 7, has been included among the antiphonal hymns and already studied. Comparison of the Assyrian and the Hebrew hymns. The literary form of the Assyrian and the Hebrew hymns. He who is accepted, no bribe, is well pleasing to Shamash. This is the Assyrian. Who takes the side of the weak, prolongs his life. Hymn to Shamash number 6. Who leads the rivers in the midst of the mountains? Who open the springs in the midst of the hills? So the Assyrian hymns to different gods. What's this? What is man? Thou shalt remember him. Even the Son of Man. What is man? Even the Son of Man, that thou shouldst remember him, that thou shouldst care for him. Psalms 8:5. Okay, these three psalms compared to the Assyrian ones. Occasionally, the lines in both the Syrian and Hebrew psalms fall into three divisions.